Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Street Entrepreneurs Workshop. Today, we have Melissa Winters with us, who will be talking about storytelling, which is very timely because we just selected our top 8 entrepreneurs for Street Pitch. And some of them are actually joining us in the studio, and we'll be getting some live feedback on their pitches towards the end. Like always, you're welcome to ask questions via Facebook Messenger, via Instagram, via YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we'll be happy to share some of your questions with Melissa. So Melissa, I'm going to go ahead and share your screen and let you take it away.
Okay, great.
I actually can't. Here it is. Perfect.
You just tell me when we're good to go.
You're good to go.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about with founders. It's one of, I think, the most underappreciated parts of building your business. And I think opportunities particularly for first-time entrepreneurs, to have safe places to think about owning your story in a more active way and beginning to think of this as a core capacity, a core skill that you need to have to advance your startup. And I want to just open up by saying most people, when they hear company storytelling, they think fundraising pitch. Their mind goes right to fundraising pitch. And while we'll talk a little bit about your story in the context of fundraising, what I would encourage you to do is to open your mind and think about your company's story as a much broader and more important narrative that affects far more than your fundraising. And maybe just a little bit about me before we get going, so you can get a little window into where this comes from. My name is Melissa Withers. I'm the managing and founding partner of RevUp Capital. I've been working as a professional investor for about 7 years now. My partners and I have invested in a little over 130 companies. But prior to that, I was a founder, and I had other experiences working with some earlier stage companies before I became an investor. So this part of the startup building exercise has been important to me for many years. In addition to the work that I do as an active investor, I am also very passionate about volunteering and mentoring. I'm mentor in residence for the Techstars Boston program, and I also run a program called Operation Athena, which is a program that we fund through our organization, which is to support early stage companies that are run by women and people of color. So, and oftentimes a lot of the work that I get to do with these founders is around the importance and the purpose of story in building your business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I've told Juliana to please interrupt with any of your questions. I can't see the chat, so I don't know what those questions are. So I'll be counting on her to let me know. So I want to start with some what might seem like bad news, but I hope in some ways it will liberate you. You are not unique as a startup. You may be profoundly unique as a person and as a founder, but it's important to recognize that it is highly unlikely that you are the only one building a business that looks like yours, right? What you are oftentimes is part of a generation of entrepreneurs who are all trying to change the world through their companies. And your ability to establish being unique is really about your story. So the bad news is that you are not unique. The good news is that your story can be unique. And I think this is another important way to think about how you build the story of your business. Is it's really the way that you differentiate yourself within your industry, within your community, within your ecosystem. And skipping over that part will be a drag on your business going forward. Maybe the best way to think about it when you're early, especially, is that story is the skin of your company. And without it, you're just a bag of bones, right? So think about all of the realities of building an early stage company. Not a lot is set in stone, right? You're a work in progress. And maybe you have some clarity around certain parts of your business, maybe your product, maybe your customer. But it's really the story that holds all of that together. And the reason why I like to think of story as skin is like the skin skin that you're in as a human, your story will have to grow and change as your company grows and changes. So if you think about your story in that way, you start to think about storytelling as being an ongoing part of your business, as important as developing your product, as important as developing your market, developing your story as you grow, and thinking about your company story as something that you will take with you through the entire life of your cycle, and that it will grow and change as your company grows, will put you in the position to assume perhaps the most important job of all, and that's the one of chief storyteller. And here's the reality here. If you, the founder, if you can't tell a great story about your business, no one else will. You set the energy level, you set the ceiling. And if you can't build a strong, compelling narrative around what you're doing, it's very likely that no one else will, right? Your customers won't do it for you. Your investors won't do it for you. Your employees won't do it for you, right? It's really important. And I think what matters here is that a strong company story gives the meaning to your vision as a founder. It gives a view into what's possible, and it convinces the listeners that you're on the right path. And in the absence of that kind of cohesive way to bring people together, you're really not going to make the progress that you want to make on your business. And so again, where we started, I talked about this myopic obsession with talking to investors, but it's really important that there are other people listening to your company story every day. First of all, you are listening, and what you tell yourself about your company, what matters, how you'll know if things are working, where you're going, what's around the corner, why you do what you do. That's a story you have to tell yourself every day, because that's what's going to keep you getting up and getting out of bed to take on the challenges that come with building a company. It's really hard work building a company. Most people talk a lot about it, but very few people actually do it. And it's really difficult work. Your team is listening, whether they're employees or just people right now who are on the ride with you. Maybe they have equity in your company, maybe they don't, but the folks that are generating time and energy to helping, they're listening to your story, and they're listening to the story of the company. And for them, it's how they're going to find their meaning and purpose inside your company. Your champions, so organizations that are supporting you, whether it's an accelerator that you're participating in, a program like this, these are the folks that are going to listen to your story, and they're going to tell other people about it. They're going to amplify it. They're going to give you feedback. Your customers, if you have customers today, they're really listening to you. But if your customers are maybe still you haven't had a lot of contact with them, your story is going to be what brings them into your business. And that story is going to take all different kinds of forms, right? It's going to be your market facing materials, but it's also going to be the way that you just talk about why you do what you do. And today, a lot of that matters, whether you're a B2B or B2C. So your partners, so if you are in a business or building a business where you need other organizations to help you, so if you have channel partners, or if there are other parts of your ecosystem inside your industry where you need their cooperation, they're listening to your story. And yes, ultimately, the people that will capitalize your business, so whatever investors you use, whether it's equity investors or angels or venture, or even if you just want to get an SBA line of credit or some working dollars, or if you want to have a crowdfunding campaign, yes, ultimately, the people that will capitalize your business will be listening to your story too. So one way that sometimes if some of you are new to storytelling around your company, if it's your first time building a company, I like to kind of think about it this way. You need to answer big questions, but you need to do it with small answers. And I think people often underestimate how hard it is to answer questions with the smallest amount of words possible, or with the most simple of concepts as possible. And one of the great exercises that you can put yourself through is to just take this simple set of questions. This is really standard set of questions, and keep forcing yourself to answer them in the simplest, most concise way possible. And imagining the listener and their short attention span, or maybe they don't understand you as well as you understand you. The simpler and the clearer and the more concise that it is, the more likely it is that the listener is going to be able to hear that, understand it, and do something with it. Because remember, the most important part of your company story is to prompt action. It's to get the listener to do something, whether it's to buy something, to support you, to participate in some way. And so if a person can't understand it and really grasp it quickly, they probably can't take the action. So just start with the big questions, but give them small answers. And this sounds really obvious, but I think founders are often so busy just working on all the parts of their business that they neglect taking the time to really get these answers up and out and into the world. Write them down, put them on a whiteboard, test them, share them with other people. What do you do? Who do you do it for? How is value created? Why would people pay you? And why are you the best team for this job? How will you know if it's working? And really, what's your secret sauce? What do you bring to the party that's different than other companies that might be working in a similar space, right? So big questions, small answers. And when you think about it this way, so having now worked with literally hundreds of companies, so to invest in 130 companies, I've probably spoken to 1,000, and I've had the opportunity through my own experience as a founder and as a mentor and advisor to work with many other companies. I can tell you that being the chief storyteller doesn't just change what you say, it changes what you do. So the answers to those questions aren't just about selling yourself to an outside audience. It's always challenging you to make sure you're doing it right. So when you ask your question, what do you do and who do you do it for? Sometimes the answers will change. You may think you're gonna sell something to a certain group of people, but when you get out in the world and you start doing customer discovery or you start selling, you realize sometimes in a very profound way that it's actually a different group of people who really want what you need and are gonna be the first to embrace your product or your service. So you don't think of it as just a cosmetic exercise. You're not just trying to make yourself look pretty in a theater environment, right? Being chief storyteller means that you are really internally on an ongoing basis evaluating these big questions with these small answers to set your strategy, right? It goes so much deeper than cosmetics. And I can tell you over time that she who controls the narrative controls the game. If you don't control your story and you are not the chief architect of that story, then other people will fill in the details for you. So the market will start to tell your story for you. If you do go on and have outside investors, those investors will start influencing your story in a way that might not always be positive. The members, your employees, your team members, they may begin changing the story in ways that are really not on path for your success. So if you lose control of your narrative, this can actually have really negative side effects to the business that go well beyond your inability to fundraise or sell. So I'm going to switch around now that you kind of know, I gave you sort of my background here and why I think that this is true, and spend a little time just giving you some tips, a few strategies for you. And I don't mean to imply you're all beginners. I know there's probably listeners who have been doing this for a long time. I still hope that that these tips will be useful to you, but especially useful if maybe company storytelling isn't your first skill. So there are three foundational pillars that every good startup story has to nail. And this is an interesting, these three are interesting and they may seem obvious to you, but the way that they rank may be less so. So the three things are why now, why this, why you. Whether you're doing a stand-up pitch for 3 minutes at a competition, whether you have a hot second to get someone's attention, or whether you're sitting down with someone to have a really deep, meaningful conversation about your business. If the listener can't walk away knowing why now, why this, why you, then your story didn't work. We're going to go from the bottom up. So why you? This should be obvious, but it goes without saying that with early stage companies, the team is really the critical link. You can have the best idea and you can have the best product, but if the right team isn't there to bring that product to market or to take it to the next level, then it's like it didn't happen at all. And team quality you'll be evaluated by that at many stages in your journey, whether it's your customers wanting to know more about your organization and your ability to service them in a way that's going to meet their needs, whether it's by investors who are contemplating investing in you, or even if it's just when you're trying to hire and get the best talent to come work for you, they're going to want to know why this team is the best team for the job. The why this is about your product or your service. And this is where most founders tend to spend, I think, almost too much time. And we neglect the other two parts. But the why this is why is your product or service the best intervention, right? Why is this the thing that's going to either be better than what came before or is going to disrupt the status quo in a really new, exciting way, or just scratch the itch that you have? Why now is, I think, the most overlooked, and in this moment, historically, has always been very important, but is I think, from a singular standpoint, right now in a very disruptive economy, more important than ever. So, why now? So when you look back historically, it's actually a really great TED Talk on how timing is the leading determinant on whether or not a company is successful. It's not how much money they raised. It's not how great their team was. It's not what industry they were in. It's whether or not they were there at the right time. And I think in an economy like ours, where there's a lot of disruption being caused by the pandemic, by all the political uncertainty, you need to understand and explain why this is the right time for your business. So it's not just why you're the best team and why this is the best product or service. You've really got to paint the picture for why the timing is right, because anyone who's been around knows that timing is really the critical link in bringing the pieces together. So I would encourage you, if you do nothing else, really practice your ability to tell a profound story around why now, why this, and why you. And my job, I listen to just pitches all day. I do it to select investments. I do it for diligence for other funds. I do it through my mentoring and advisory work. And I can tell you that why now, why this, why you, not just for me, but for many of my peers in the industry, it's the key, man. You got to get this right. And then right after that, do that first, but right after that, start to think about your story as being modular, right? I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to nail everything in one bite. And there's this pressure, particularly when you've been challenged to do these pitches, these short pitches, everything kind of has to fit together. But try to think about your company story in a bit of a more modular way. And what that allows you to do is kind of accept where you have maybe not the best answers yet. I mean, when you're early, you don't know everything. And if you pretend like everything's completely in the bag, right, you're going to get sniffed out. People know that early stage companies, that there are gaps in what you know, gaps in what you do, and gaps in your capacity. So if you think of your story as being more modular, what you can do is really focus on accentuating the best parts of your story. So the modulars, the modules where you feel the most confident, and the ones that reflect what is the most exciting about your company. And then you can figure out how to fit the places where you're less confident or less certain in between those kind of assets, right? As a way to create a narrative that feels comfortable, right? That it kind of balances the pros and cons and the knowns and the unknowns. And this isn't anything that I invented. You can find this probably in other parts of your program and certainly online, but these are some of the common ones. You know, you've really got to be able to just talk about your market problem. So what's the problem you're solving? And then have a couple proof points for why you believe this is a problem. It can be how much money is lost to a problem. It can be how much money is spent to solve a problem, or it can be an emerging problem that didn't exist before, and now that means we need new solutions to solve that problem. The solution, that's where you fit. So that's the why this part of your story. So how does your technology, your service, whatever it is, how does it fit? How do you bring a solution to that problem? Traction. Traction doesn't just mean sales. Traction means what are the little ways that you can communicate that you're making meaningful progress on bringing this idea to life. So if you're early and you're pre-market, this can be about conversations you've had with customers, future customers, other kinds of validation. Maybe you have pilots or you have proof of concept activities. This is the best way that you can show that you have momentum, that you're not sort of still sitting there with your cocktail napkin, that you've actually taken this idea and you've made concerted efforts to push it forward. And then when you're further along, the traction starts to reflect around either sales or proof of concepts, whatever it is. And as you go through time, you need to articulate where you are and how much ground you've covered. And this is a place for you to really excel and show your execution capability and all of the incredible skills that you bring to the table. Your team, we already talked about that. Do not be modest here. Do not, you need to point out why you've assembled some great people to work on this. Sometimes a way to accentuate this is if you are kind of still small and you either don't have the money or the access to hire a big team. This is a place where you can showcase an advisory board. So you can find some folks in your industry that are well respected or play important roles, and you can invite them to be a formal advisor to your company, and you can express that in your story. Your economic model. So again, when you're ready, not everybody can articulate this on day one, but how do you make money? What are the economic underpinnings of your business? And can you show that you have a grasp of that and how that's going to play out over time? This becomes important when you want to take other people's money into your business. You need to demonstrate that you see a path to how the company's going to grow and how you're going to put those resources to good use. Your secret sauce. This is really important, and you probably won't. It may be obvious to you, but if it's not, don't panic. But you've got to keep evaluating and poking at what makes you really special. Why are you going to break through? Why is this the team or the solution or the time? And it can be any one of those things that's going to really make you stand out and be different than other competitors or other solutions on the market. And then most importantly in a story, and I think this is the other one we often overlook, is the call to action. So when you tell a story, making sure that you know who's listening and what you want from them. So if you're doing a pitch and you know that you're looking for a certain kind of introduction into a certain customer segment, maybe you're looking for a resource, maybe you're raising money, whatever it is, don't be afraid to let your story make clear what comes next and how people can help you. I can tell you that when I'm involved in the conversation with an entrepreneur, I really appreciate it when they're very explicit, usually towards the end of their story, about what they need from me. It makes it easy for me to either identify the way that I can get involved and help, or not, right? And I think that that's really important part of the story arc. So just now thinking about the modules, so we now know we've got the pillars, right? The why now, why this, why you. And now you have a little bit of a framework for the different parts of the story that you're going to stitch together. Here are just a couple general storytelling tips that whatever module that you're describing, these I think will help you make more compelling modules. So at the top of this, I think it is one of the most important pieces of advice that I can give you. And I can say that when this plays out in real life, you really see the listeners just light up. Make people, not concepts, the star of your story. So when you're talking about your market problem or your solution, don't use industry stats. Take a case study. Show me an example of an actual customer type, the problem that they have and the implications of that, and then show me how you fix that, right? So whenever you can, use actual humans and people to tell your story. Companies, individuals in a store. Like, it can be the person inside of a company who has the problem. It really brings the story alive, and I think shows that you understand that your solution actually has to fit in to the people in that industry, rather than just conceptually into a tool stack. Also, when you're doing pitches, this can just be a great way to keep people from checking their emails and zoning out. People really have a hard time listening. I'm sure many of you are probably right now, you're already coming in and out of this conversation. It's natural. It's what humans do. So when you have an opportunity to make a story more human, humans tend to pay attention. So it's just a good technique to keep people interested and to make it more emotive, which tends to get the listener more invested in the story and therefore more likely to pay attention for longer. And then I think understand that there's some flavors to the details that you put in this module. So there's what's strong, there's what's unknown, and there's what's weak. And so in your company, there's going to be these three flavors of details. There's going to be the stuff that is strong. You feel good about it. It's tested. You know it. You've built it. You've done it. You just know you've got this part on lock. Then there's going to be the parts where you're like, we don't have that yet. And it could be either on your product, technology, it could be market research, whatever it is. And then there's this stuff in the middle called what's unknown. And these are some of the things you just can't figure out until you have more contact with your market. So you want to have a sense of these three flavors and know where your assets line up. So that way you can position them in an order that either gets you to the right conversation so that you can focus on getting out of a conversation what you want. Sometimes you actually want to talk about what's weak because you want the listener of that story to help you solve it. Other times you really want to focus on what's strong because you're trying to get the confidence of the listener to come on the journey with you, whatever that means. And then sometimes you really want to highlight what's unknown because you're telling your story perhaps to a group of people who could maybe clue you in to what some of the unknowns are and how you might begin to fill in the blanks. And having a strong grasp of that can help you tailor your story each time you tell it to get exactly what you want from the listener. And then this gives you a really important framework here to take unknowns and reframe them as opportunities. So sometimes if there's things you don't know and you haven't been able to think about that or become comfortable with that, unknowns can start to feel like weaknesses or feel like risks. And really, you can reframe them as opportunities that you're going to go into the market and you're going to figure this stuff out. And that's going to be an asset, not a weakness. And this is where you see more experienced founders. This is one of the things you'll see when they tell their stories later or when they have their second company. They really take advantage of that, and you can see how they own that narrative with a little more confidence. I think it's important to remember when you're early, most of your listeners are going to want to know how you fit into a bigger picture, whether that's an industry or into something, right? No startup is alone. You're either selling into an industry vertical or you're selling into a market, and you have to use your story to paint yourself into that bigger picture. And a lot of times, most founders think about it in terms of just their competition slide, right? And they just try to show like how they compete with other similar products or services. What you'll see with good storytellers, good company storytellers, is they paint beyond that and they show themselves as having a very unique point of view in the ecosystem, as understanding the ecosystem, understanding the industry, and tying the story into not just the competitive dynamics of what you'll ultimately sell into, but the opportunity of the industry, where the industry is going. Really painting yourself into the future projection of an industry can be a powerful way to make your company feel really now, right? Going back to that why now question. This is an important technique for communicating that this is the right time for your business. And this can require you to do a little more work, maybe refine some of the assumptions you have. A lot of this goes back into why you got started on this journey in the first place. You must have seen something either in your customer or in the industry where you wanted to make a solution. So you've got to take the time to unpack that and maybe do a little more listening, really understand where other people in the industry, what are they saying about the industry as a whole, and get yourself into that picture and paint yourself there. And then we kind of glossed over this a few minutes ago, but you've got to bring the sauce. You've just got to figure out what's the thing that you feel makes you special. And you've got to be confident in selling this. Without it, it can be so hard to break through. This is very important, especially when you're talking to your customers and to investors. You have to be bold in asserting your secret sauce, the thing that you bring to the party that's going to help you be better, be different, or achieve what others before you couldn't achieve. And I think this is a good place to get advice and to get support and to get help, to really make sure that you are in fact zeroing in on the most important, most special part of your business. Sometimes when you're building the business, what you think is your secret sauce, right, might not actually be the most exciting part of your business. And this is a place where telling your story to other listeners, particularly in safe environments like the one that you're in now, can really change what you do, not just change what you say. And then this probably goes without saying, but you have to practice every single day. It's the same as if you were thinking about your product or thinking about your marketing strategy. Same thing. You as chief storyteller, you've got to keep working on this, and you've got to find environments to do it. So you can do it by talking to your teammates and challenging yourself to continue to articulate what you do, who you do it for, why it's important. You can do it in environments and training environments like this. You can do it at pitch competitions. But you need to prepare yourself. If you're going to be the CEO or the CTO or any co-founder position, you're going to have to learn to tell your story better every single day. So get comfortable with it, get used to it, and relax. And if you don't love your story, no one else is going to love it. So you've got to keep practicing so that you can find the place where it feels natural. I think one of the mistakes I sometimes see founders make is they memorize a pitch and they confuse that with a story, right? So it's not to say you shouldn't memorize your 3-minute pitch and be able to get up there and nail it every time, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Your story really has to come from inside of you. It's not something you can memorize. It's the kind of thing that you could tell the same story with different words if you had to, right? Because it's coming from a sort of wellspring inside you of belief, a core belief about the business and where you think it's going. And so you've got to treat it like a discipline. It's a workout. You got to do it every single day if you want to get the gains. This is my contact information. You're welcome to reach out. I do have office hours that are available throughout the year. Well, I mean, every month for founders to just give them some feedback. And you certainly can creep up on my LinkedIn profile. And if you note that there's anyone in my network that could be helpful to you on your journey, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's why we're here to help you. So Juliana, that's sort of it for one-way communication. And I'm happy to answer questions, go deeper, or do whatever else is useful for the audience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you for offering up your network and being open to connecting with founders. That's truly wonderful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and add our top participants into the stream. So this is Maddie, Ruth, Sharonor, Walter, and PJ.
Oh my God, it's such a relief to see actual humans. I haven't seen anyone's faces. I've just been like blathering towards my own slides and just hoping that there was even anyone out there. So what a relief to see actual human beings.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's actually others watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But we wanted to bring some of our finalists onto this conversation because they're going to be doing their pitch next weekend. And they've been working very hard to nail down their problem, their solution, their market, and all kind of the blurbs, right? And I'm sure they have a lot of questions, and some of them might even be brave enough to try their pitch and get some feedback. So
I'm here for it.
Yeah, so I want to kind of give them the floor. And if you guys want, just kind of raise your hand and Melissa will call on you. That way we don't talk over each other. And be sure to unmute yourselves. Go.
Yeah, Ruth went first. She right there. What's up?
So I'm not quite brave enough to give my pitch yet. Juliana and I were working on it this morning and I'm still readjusting. You said paint yourself into a bigger picture. And my question is, if you've got a business that you know the majority of the market is zigging one way and you're zagging the other way, how do you frame that as a really great thing instead of, oh my gosh, why are you the only one doing that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So there's this thing, sometimes it's called topic authority. Some people, it's in an old fashioned way, it was point of view. I think this is if you want to do that, you almost have to have a point of view on why the zag doesn't always have to be in opposition to the zig. So I think just because you're going one way doesn't mean you have to say the other way is bad, but it's imperative on you to have a voice in that. So why are you going to zag if most people are zigging, right? Again, that really goes back to your ability to articulate the opportunity that you see, the special secret sauce that you're bringing to that, right? And I think oftentimes timing is a big part of that zig and zag. Usually when someone zigs instead of zagging, it's because they see something in the moment, either a little before everybody else does, right? So use some of those concepts to give yourself a point of view. And then you got to figure out, where are other tastemakers and people in your industry? Where are they sharing that? It can be as simple as having a post on LinkedIn that just says, like, this is what I believe and why I think it's important. I've been in this industry for X amount of time. Like, I am credible, right? So sometimes it can just be claiming your space, and then from there, forcing yourself to articulate and externalize in a public setting why it is that you've made the choices that you've made, and that may help you find those early adopters who believe that you're right? You're probably not alone. And if it ends up that you do all that and like it's total crickets, then you have an opportunity to ask yourself, should I really zig? Like, is this really, like, if no one else is putting their hand up and saying, yes, I see that too, well, then now you've also done a little customer discovery, right? You've done a little market development work that you might realign that just a little bit.
Thank you.
Speaking of crickets.
Walter, I know you've been working really hard on your
I'll speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. No, I'm not brave enough to practice my pitch with Melissa right now because I'm still working on it. But your presentation was absolutely amazing. Some of the things you said, I completely concur with, and some of the challenges that I face, that you definitely. One of the things, I'm telling my story. My story is business. My story starts from how I was raised until today, and I'm going on 50. But it's my story, my business, right? So my challenge is, how do you tell that concise and in 5 minutes or 3 minutes? I mean, I've written my story out, like in a book already, right? And so how do I, not be so verbose and hit the main points?
Yeah.
And that's what I started to do today. I was just kind of outlining all the different, benchmarks of my story that I would hit on. I'm like, well,
So, Walter, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I got the gist, which is how do you take a lifetime of experience and boil it down to something that isn't like what that someone's going to stay on the journey with you, right? Like acknowledging that listeners just don't want to listen for that long, right? I mean, we're all a bunch of giant distractible babies who almost always our brains would rather be doing something else about 30 seconds after someone starts talking, right? That is just reality. So this is an interesting challenge I think you'll face. So I have a company in my portfolio with a similar challenge that he's recently had to overcome, where his personal story was in the beginning extremely important to why his company was bankable, right? Because his personal experience, and particularly through his professional experience, was kind of his secret sauce. And so for a long time, every time he told the story of the business, he opened up with this kind of retelling of how he got to this moment, how he got to this problem. And then over time, what happened was that became more of an anchor. Instead of lifting him up, it started to weigh him down. So one of the things that you want to do is start to edit out try to find the smallest little bits and pieces that have stayed stable over time, while everything else is kind of, all seems very important. Try to look back and go and put it back into some of the context that we talked about, right? Like maybe what you do is you use your personal story to really tell a compelling why now part of the right, or a why you, right? But you've got to figure out how to self-edit a little bit. So if you want to have this thing called founder fit, right? And you want to make sure you're talking about why you are the best person to do this. But I think you've got to also remember that for the listener, right? There's sort of a place where it has to go from being about you and you getting me interested in you to it being about me too, right? Think about a story, right? You get my attention by getting my emotions activated, by being authentic and telling me a personal story. But at some point, if you don't make it about me, I can't plug in, right? So that's where you got to turn the corner and start to talk about the people you help, the job you do, the way your product functions. And what that does is it stops it from becoming just sort of this autobiographical one-way thing where people just lose interest, right? So you find a way to get my attention through the authenticity of your experience, but then you've got to discipline yourself and then give me the opportunity to get involved. And since I'll get involved with the business, right? You've got to find a way to get there.
Right. Awesome. Great answer. Great. Thank you. That's perfect.
No problem.
I have a question about what's unknown. So things have been changing very quickly in this environment. And my company was originally focused on doing high fashion flat shoes for women in extended sizes. Now I'm seeing that it's more about high fashion flat shoes for all women on the go. And that's a better focus. But more recently, nobody's on the go anymore. Everybody's on the go in their houses. And so I'm even seeing just a pivot from last week to this week where, the infection rates have gone up and people are really grounding again in an environment where it seemed like it was about to, just have some semblance of normality. Yeah. We're now grounded again. And so I'm finding myself in a position to change again. And so when we're talking about what's unknown, there's a lot that's unknown, right? So we don't know what's going to happen next month. So I'm focusing now on high fashion flat shoes, but with a focus on comfort and coziness, right? So comfort.
A focus on what? I'm sorry, that last part cut out. A focus on what?
Comfort and coziness. So just this word cozy, because everybody's kind of home. Yeah. But people still want to lead Instagrammable lives and they still have to show up for a lot of events. And so the question is, what am I supposed to do when I don't know what's going to happen?
No, I have a shoe company in my portfolio. They're called Adelante, and they make shoes in Guatemala, but where they empower the Guatemalan craftsmen to actually be paid what they should be paid, right? So they're really shoes that are meant to be worn outside. Like they're leather. I'm wearing a pair right now. They're leather boots that you're supposed to wear outside. And so they have had a similar experience with how do you reposition. I would say, oftentimes when we think about going to the market with a consumer product, we think the larger the addressable audience, the better it will be. It's not true. If you're early, I would say go the opposite, right? And rather than try to communicate to the largest group of people this kind of generic message around cozy, I'm not sure you should so quickly move away from your differentiator, which was flat shoes and extended sizes. Like I don't know enough about your business to give you business advice, but I would say when you are going to market with your sort of let's just say the market facing side of your story, the smaller, we call it a beachhead market. And a lot of times there's this pressure to describe like you're going to be the next greatest shoe company, like you're going to be the next Allbirds, right? There's this pressure to make it sound like you're going to sell to everybody. I can tell you when Allbirds started, they didn't sell to everybody. They sold to a very, 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 very narrow group of people and then grew from there. So one thing you can do during difficult times is actually constrain yourself and go back to the place where you have the best chance of differentiating, right? Because if you can't sell a product that's highly differentiated in an effective, cost-effective way to a small group of people, you're never going to sell an undifferentiated product to a large group of people at a price you can afford. Does that make sense? Think of it more as lily pads that get you across the pond rather than just sort of catapulting yourself like across the pond. So one way that you can navigate unknowns is to just experiment with the way that you're positioning your value proposition. And the best way to experiment is to really control for variables. So rather than have a generic message, right, to a lot of different user groups, go hyper specific to smaller user groups. And then you can start to see where did you get a little bit of action, like who clicked, like what happened. And then from there, you can use that data to help you guide your choices. And it gets you out of the business of having to feel like you know the answer before you've gone out and done the experimenting.
Okay. So that sounds really good in business operations. Now, how does that translate to the pitch setting?
So in the pitch setting, again, I think if anybody that's going to want to get involved with your company, right? So let's just talk about investors, right? If you want to have a direct-to-consumer company and you want to get an investor interested, eventually you need to show that, yes, you're going to be big enough to be interesting. But a good investor who has experience in direct-to-consumer will appreciate that you're highly differentiated, will appreciate that your first movement into the market, right? You build your toehold here, but then you can figure out what you have to do is tell the story about how you leverage that, right? So you don't have to start by eating the whole elephant, but you start, what you have to do is you've got to make a compelling case that you know how to connect the dots. And so if you start with this particular group of customers, this particular product, you then need to tell the story about what you layer on, either different products to that same audience through different partners, or eventually moving in deeper into the market once you have a little momentum. So that's where you have to sort of kind of build a little bit more speculative confidence on telling people how you'll connect the dots as you progress the company into the market. But also, I just wouldn't be so sure that you can't tell a compelling story about a smaller market as long as you can prove that you can sell enough to those people, and that there's enough of those people out there, right, to make the juice worth the squeeze.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to go ahead and share a question that we received from our Facebook Messenger, and it's what is the best way to deal with a lack of team? If you are the only one.
Yeah, this is so hard. I really appreciate this. I didn't grow. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I went to a super shitty school. I did not meet fancy entrepreneurs while I was at my tiny public college that nobody cares about. And so it wasn't until years later that I was able to start a company. So I really do appreciate this. A few things you can do. First is you need to be so focused on networking yourself to other resources. So for starters, you have to be the super networker, right? So if you can't hire a team or buy a team, then you've got to figure out how to get other people to help you. And you can do that through the programs that exist to help early stage companies that create community, where you might accidentally find someone who might want to come be a part of your journey, and maybe in a way that you can afford. One of the best ways to do it, almost anyone can do if you try hard enough, is by building an advisory board that you can persuade to provide ongoing support to the company, oftentimes in lieu of an executive team, right? And you can do this by formally asking someone to be an advisor, where sometimes you give them a point or two of equity in your company. You can do it just by getting them to commit to let you put their name on a slide. Sometimes it's just to buy you some time, right? To show that you're not alone in the world, because you need maybe a little bit of air cover. You need to show that you have some support. But one way that you can do it is to have an advisory group, either formal or informal, where you can bring them together. I'm on an advisory board for a company that I meet with her once a week for an hour, and then we as a board meet every quarter, and we essentially help her solve problems. So we are an extension of her team, and she's only got 4 employees, right? She doesn't have a ton of money. And when you go to fundraise, that can be a way to signal to investors that you know how to attract talent to the team. Another thing that you can do is, if, let's say, you know who you'd want to hire, that's also just important sometimes. So even if you can't hire, don't not do the work of at least articulating, if you had money, who would you hire? So a lot of times I'll ask a company the question, who'd be your next hire? It tells me a lot about how you're thinking about it if you have a good answer to that, right? So if you're like, oh, if I had all the money in the world, right, I would hire, this is the next person I would hire. Or as soon as I had $50,000, I'm going to hire, a marketing support, or whatever it is. So that's another way to just make sure that you're not, just because you don't have the team, don't not project the team you want, because it may help others around you find candidates for that role, right? By making clear what you need. And then in terms of finding people that will come and kind of join your team, I mean, that's about figuring out creative ways to get into communities and spaces where you think those folks might be hanging out. And you've got to be out there kind of hanging yourself out and putting it out there. Then on the kind of more practical side, figuring out, what can you buy, right? What can you contract and outsource? And sometimes you can just get a little bit of resource to do that, right? To find that, that sort of supplement. That can be a good step if you don't really know what you need. But in terms of how you put it into your story, the most important thing you need to demonstrate is that you do know how to build a team. Most early stage companies don't have enough money to buy the team they need. But what you just need to do is you need to demonstrate that you've either done it before, so you know how to build a team. So maybe you were a manager in another life, you know how to build a team, or you show that you can bring some advisors together in order, and to show that you're exciting enough for these credible people to give you their time and let you put their name up on it, like put it into your slide. Those are just kind of two like everyday techniques that you can do to kind of buy some time or maybe close that first investment.
And here's another one from Facebook comments. I've heard the statement, you pitch to customers tells you how you'll improve their lives. Is this true in regards to community pitches?
I don't think I understand that question.
Yes. Jason, would you like to elaborate a little bit? And I'll read the first part of it. So I'm structuring a 1-minute pitch for an audience of local people. I plan on focusing the story, problem, and solution. Is this a good format to use to pitch to people who are not investors? I have heard the statement, your pitch to customers tells how you'll improve their lives. Is this true in regards to community pitches? Also, I'm dyslexic, so if I misread that, I'm so sorry.
So a couple things there. So when you get an opportunity to pitch to a group of community members, one thing you want to do is take a guess about what's the best thing you might get from the community, right? So what's the thing that they might be able to do to help you? And I don't mean that to sound crass. I mean, you want to be a good member of the community, but if they're coming to listen to you, then they might want to help, right? They're looking how to help. So sometimes with a community pitch, it's not about raising money, right? Unless you're running a crowdfunding campaign, which then it might be. Otherwise, what you might be doing is asking the community if they know anyone who could be a good customer for you. So do they know of someone that might have the problem that you're looking to solve? Or if you're looking to find an expert to give you advice, maybe someone in that audience, knows some things that could help you out. So I think always the first part of your pitch in any environment just needs to be really clear around what you do, who you do it for, why it matters, right? Going back to that, why now, why this, why you. But I think it's very important in these community pitches, don't be afraid to be extremely transparent about what your needs are, because most of these community pitches that's what we're trying to do, right? So I would just think a little bit about exactly who's in the audience and what's the chances that maybe somebody out there, holds the key, right? I think we think a lot about invest as though getting investment is the only thing that matters, but the reality is you may have to do a little bit before anybody writes you a check. So how do you engage the community in that process? And sometimes it can be as simple as, I'm looking for an advisor who understands X, Y, and Z. And just somebody in the audience might be like, oh, I know someone, and then they'll come, they'll come and introduce you or tell you. So just don't overcomplicate it, right? Just be candid with yourself, be honest about what your goals and objectives are, and then try to make that story feel as relevant and real to the listeners.
So I want to give Maddie and Paul the opportunity to ask a question because they haven't had the chance. But if you guys don't have anything top of mind, we can go to Sharon, who I know has a question in the wings. Yes? Awesome. Sharon, you're on. Okay.
So Mike, I have two questions. The first is about dual focused pitches. So I'm just gonna make it really specific and I hope someone can gather something for their own pitch in my question. So going back to what we were talking about before, so if I'm focusing on my niche and then I have a hope to broaden later to all women who need high fashion flat shoes and, with a focus on comfort and going from home to outside, then how can I do that without it seeming clunky or like I'm trying to do way too much?
So maybe one thing you might want to do is this goes back to, why are you different than other flat companies that currently sell what are, they consider them to be upper market flats, right? There's a bunch of them. So this comes back to, so you tell me right now, what's your secret sauce, Sharon? What are you bringing to this party that's going to make you different than all the other flat shoe people out there?
Okay, so it's my design inspiration. I just have like a design aesthetic that really works for a generation of high fashion, powerful women. Also, I'm a professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology. I teach people how to make shoes. I have a passion for shoemaking, and I give back to the community.
Yeah. So you're never going to sell a shoe to everybody. That's not your secret sauce.
Okay.
Like that's not what you just told me is not a mass produced flat. Like even if it has a high price tag, what you told me was that you're selling to an audience that wants a more wants a specialer. Wants a more specialer. Wants a more specialer. How can I make that worse? Wants a more specialer experience. And I think if your secret sauce is that you're a high fashion designer that wants to design flats, and your argument is that not enough high fashion designers are designing flats, and that there's an audience of women who have money to pay for high fashion flats, then you're never going to be for everybody, because that's not everybody, right? So you've got to just double down on what makes you special and unique. And then I believe you can tell a story that is, once I know what your price point is, once I know what's your experience? Are these custom? Are they collection driven? Do they come, are you going to create the sense of FOMA that you've got to tell the story. If your secret sauce is that you're special and the thing you're going to make is so special that people are going to be lining up in droves to get it, then you need to express how you're going to deliver that experience to your consumer and why that's going to differentiate you. And in that sense, you're the opposite of for everybody.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah.
So,
I don't need to
just be, just be don't, if you never ever let pressure to have a better looking slide take you away from your secret sauce, because you'll lose. So don't have the pressure to somehow show that you're going to be like the shoe for the entire world, distract you from who it is that you are going to be, which is a high fashion flat for a very particular group of consumers who have enough money to make it meaningful to you.
Thank you. My second question was about just the physical.
Can you hold off on that question? We'll come back to it, I promise. So we have a volunteer. Maddie wants to share her story and get some feedback.
All right.
Alrighty, hi, thank you. Bear with any pet noises that are in the background. So yeah, I figured I would volunteer to share my sort of raw story of how I started my business, and maybe get some feedback from you on, what parts sound really good, what parts maybe to leave out. So here it goes. So back in 2016, I was working my first real corporate professional job. And it was about a year and a half until I realized that I was totally miserable. And it was following me home after work. Just the quality of life was just not good. And for some reason, I was a very young adult, had bills to pay, had to pay my rent. And I fell into the same mindset that I think a lot of people do, which was that I can't quit this job that makes me miserable because I have to pay my rent, right? So I kind of pondered that and sat with it for a week or so until I had a light bulb moment. I was like, wait a second. I don't have to stay at this job. Nothing is forcing me to. I can totally do something else. I, for example, could make a little artsy craftsy thing and take a little bit of a lesser paying job and probably be able to get by. So I very distinctly remember I was pacing around my little one-bedroom apartment, walking circles around my couch, thinking, what could I do? What could I do? And as I'm walking around, I noticed that there's 10 bajillion candles just all over my apartment. And then another light bulb moment, oh, I bet I could learn how to make candles. And so sure enough, with the resources we have these days, I was able to just look at videos on YouTube online, and through that I got the basics, and then through a lot of testing and trial and error, I got good at candle making. So then I'm still pacing, and I was probably pacing for several hours that night. And some time into it, I'm like, okay, cool, I've got candle making down, but if anyone's going to want to buy these, I have to make it unique, of course, business 101. So I decided to put a surprise crystal inside. I was big into collecting crystals. So that was my like, oh, that would be fun, a surprise crystal inside. So to kind of summarize the rest, I, made my product. I took it to local farmers markets. I did craft shows and expanded very grassroots operation sort. And one day a lady came up to me and she said, do you sell these wholesale? And at the time I had no clue what that meant, but I said, yes, of course. And really it expanded more broadly and more quickly than I ever thought it would, which is a really great thing. So just through like farmers markets and craft shows and then wholesale, I would go to main streets locally and go physically pitch my products into the stores. And then it just grew like that. And then in November of 2019, we opened a retail store in Union Station in DC. 2020 was not the year to do that, but I didn't know that in November of 2019. So we made the decision, and I'm wrapping it up here. We made the decision to close that store. Our lease was only 1 year. So now where we're at is we're sort of pivoting. We recently released DIY candle making kits. We're doing like Zoom candle making classes. We're kind of refocusing and regrouping after that. So that's sort of in a nutshell.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. No one's going to listen to that for as long as you were talking. Just because it's too personal to you. It's like impenetrable, right? So what you want to do is let's pick out the parts of that are relatable, right? So and then we can kind of break down whether they're relatable enough to get someone to take action, right? I think the first thing I would just encourage you to do is think about the end before you begin. Where do you want the listener to go? And what reaction do you want them to have? So do you want them to go check out your a product online? Do you want them to become a customer, right? Like, what is it that you want? And I would use that as your guiding light to help you edit down what parts of the story that you keep. I will tell you the story of the person who had a day job and got bored by it and wanted to become a founder. I wouldn't use it. I don't actually think it's not additive. I think what you could do is when you get to the part where you talk about yourself, you can make clear what maybe some of the skills were that you brought into your founder journey that you perhaps developed, or like sometimes you can go back and say, I used to have this role in life and then I did this. But I think the like light bulb moment, it's kind of it's not special enough, right? To get someone to see you as really unique. I would probably think about starting more in the middle of that story, right? And about where your unique insight was, which was to turn the candle into more of an experience and to give the candle, the user of the candle, an opportunity to kind of have a moment of expectation and excitement, right? But I think one technique for you that probably would be a better intro into this to show the opportunity is to do that, stitch yourself into a larger story. I would say start with, you can use this sort of surprise factor. Like you can talk about the self-care industry and self-care at home, and literally if you look at data around candle sales in the last 5 years, it's insane, right? The way candles went from Yankee Candle to all of these boutique candles, and you can talk about some of the brands that have talk about the candle renaissance. A renaissance in candle making and boutique candles, right? Now you'll have to defend yourself against, LAFCO and Homesick and all the other candle companies that are out there now kind of doing that. But I would say start by first showing the timing, the now part, and then you can position yourself into I'd start the story where you just say, I fell in love with candle making and I wanted to make candles that I could share with others. But as I was sort of going through that, I realized how, that just, it wasn't enough to stand out. It wasn't experience. So I just, I found my way to this by putting these crystals. You just gotta kind of dress it up a little bit and make it not feel so casual, right? In order to remember, you got to the end of that and I didn't know what you wanted or what you needed or how to help you. Right. You see, like, and I think that's the missed opportunity is start with the end. Ask yourself at the end of this pitch, what do I want the listener to do? And then everything before that should feed into that. So make a decision about what it is that you want them to do. And it can change from like moment to moment, like whoever you're talking to. It could be, I want to talk to someone about how to grow my business and how to grow my direct to consumer business beyond the limits of what I can do on my own. It could be, I think I'm ready to take this kind of accidental success to another level. And I'm looking for people who are going to help me in that journey, right? You've got to like figure out what you want the purpose of the story to be and what you want the listener to take away from it. And then you can kind of go back and pull out from your kind of autobiographical details and the journey, the key points that kind of build you to that climax where it's obvious to me that you're really onto something. Here's what you need. And I'm really excited to get involved and help you.
Cool. That was really helpful. Thank you.
I see. I'm going to go get a candle. But you didn't tell me where to get the candle. You gotta give me the payoff, man. Give me the payoff.
So where can people get candles, Maddie?
Sunstonecandles.com.
What's it? Say it again.
Sunstonecandles.com.
Yeah. You also never said the name of your company. Just want to point that out.
I had a disclaimer that it was the raw version.
No, I know, and I hope you take the feedback in the spirit of which it's given.
Very helpful.
Definitely to everybody listening, get used to saying the name of your company a lot. Because that's what you like. That's the thing you want me to remember, right? Is your name and the company name. So yeah, get used to saying your name a lot.
And I'll also add that they're entirely made of soy, and the soy crystals, if you believe in it, have healing properties, and they have helped a lot of customers cope with mental health and self-care.
Yeah. I actually know all that about candles and crystals, but you didn't go there. And don't take this the wrong way. That's way more interesting than that you were a millennial who didn't want to work for the man. You know what I'm saying? And then if the person listening doesn't believe in the market potential of all natural soy-based candles and they don't believe in crystals, they're not going to help you anyway. So don't worry about turning them off. This is kind of very similar to Sharonor. I hope I'm not butchering your name. No. What's your secret sauce? And then you've got to bring the sauce. And if somebody doesn't like the sauce, good riddance. They're not going to help you anyway. So you hid all the important stuff, which was that you had discovered a way to merge this exciting market category of all natural soy-based non-toxic candles with this fast-growing market for crystals, and you brought them together to create an exciting and intimate user experience that people go gaga over. You didn't tell me how many candles you sold. You didn't tell me anything, right? It's just, you can see just in even talking to you now, how much more interested I am in that, right? Than in you didn't want to have a day job for the man, and so you started your own company, right?
Maddie, I salute you for being brave to share too.
Seriously, yes. I hope it's really difficult.
I'm glad I did. It was very helpful.
Paul also wants to share his story.
Okay.
Paul, can you keep it to 1 minute?
90.
Paul also wants to share his story.
I'll give you 90 seconds.
He's more generous than I am. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and remove people from the studio so that we can see.
That was me.
Cool. And go back on. Go for it whenever you like.
Am I still on the show?
Paul, you're still on the show. Feel free to share whenever you like. Yes. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hey, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now.
Awesome. Go ahead. Go ahead and share your pitch.
Sure. My name is Paul Joseph. I'm the founder of Vegan Skin by Paul Joseph. That's an all-natural plant-based skincare. We are an e-commerce plant-based skincare company that specializes in products that contain less than 10 plant-based ingredients. I created the products after being diagnosed with a skin disease called hidradenitis that doesn't have a cure. By the time I was 29, I had half my body completely covered in boils and cysts and completely contemplated ending my life. It was at that point that I said, you know what? You can either accept this or you can figure out a solution for yourself, which is exactly what I did. I created 3 signature products: a skin correcting face and body butter, a body scrub, and also a face and body oil. that did wonders for me. I came out on Facebook and let everybody know what product that I had created. And then something really amazing happened. People started asking if they could try the products and experience some life-changing results. And now here we are 4 years later, really providing a unique solution to people who have very, very unique skin needs. It would be incredibly awesome if we could get people to actually become customers of our products so that you can actually see for yourself exactly how amazing the products actually work and how quickly the products work. You can find us on the web at www.veganskin.shop. And you can also follow us on Instagram at veganskin_ to find out all the amazing things that we're doing and how we're actually changing people's skins.
Nice. Paul, that was great. You talked really fast in the beginning. So, and so I heard the word vegan and I heard the word skincare. Just give yourself, go slow. You're like me. I mean, I am telling you, you're a fast talker. I mean, like I'm a super fast talker. Really good example of a little bit of backstory, right? Like, but tight, you're like 26 years covered in boils, finally feeling better, right? Like now I want to share it with the world. Like it's a really good example. I think it was Walter who asked earlier, like, I'm sure your actual story was a little longer than that, right? I'm sure you tried a lot of other stuff, right? But like you skipped all that, and right? And so you built the authenticity, you kind of gave me the power. I felt the power that you were the right guy for the times. I think as you think about the pitch, even ways to professionalize it even more, you could throw in a little stat about how vegan-based products is one of the fastest growing categories in the market, right? Just again, like giving people this nod that like, just because your disease is rare, it doesn't, like making sure you're reminding me that right? So very,
everyone.
Yeah, just a subtle twist though. Like it's a vision into that there's a real, again, painting yourself into a larger picture, which is a really big growing market of direct to consumer vegan skincare products, right? And I love the the less than 10 ingredients. Like anybody who knows that will know that that's actually another important part of that growing market, right?
Yes.
The only thing, I think you deferred to having people be customers. I think in some environments, if you were pitching to maybe like if an investor was listening or somebody who might want to help you build your business, you might give a little nod to what comes next. And you can do that by saying, and you might even say, I don't know if you're comfortable, but sometimes if you even share the most a specific number, like, and I'm so proud that as of last month, we've reached X number of customers, or we've sold X number of products, or in some cases, we've generated X amount of revenue. It really depends on what your best stat is. It really lands the plane and helps people understand what stage you're at. And then right after that, you can say, and we're ready to take the business to the next level. We see tremendous opportunities to X, Y, and Z. And so if you think you can, be a part of that journey, come talk to me after the pitch, or here's my contact information. But it was really overall completely, I understood why now, why this, why you, and I will remember that when I for the rest, it's on my mind now. I won't forget it. And I think that's what you're looking for with these kind of short pitches.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. Drop me a line and I'll let you. We do a lot of direct to consumer activities, and so there may be service provider. It could just be people in my network that at this stage might be just good for you to know, good for you to connect into.
Awesome. And I think Ruth has a question that is actually in a lot of entrepreneurs' minds. So
okay. Liana, what time are we going to today?
We are ending in 1 minute and 2 minutes.
Okay.
My question is short. Well, the answer might not be. So I'm also a direct-to-consumer company. Mouse Loves Pig. We do open-ended toys. And I'm looking to really start growing aggressively. How do you, in a community-based pitch or even a pitch like what we're about to do, how do you hint at possible investment in the future without falling afoul of any SEC rules before you've figured out what that's going to be?
I mean,
is that a question for a lawyer, or like as an investor?
If you have a thousand things should be keeping you up at night, worrying that the SEC is going to come after you for suggesting that you might want to raise money for your business is not one of them, right? There's a big difference between doing a fundraising deck where you're making, where you're connecting dots around money in, profit out, and you sort of suggesting to the world that you're ready to take the business to the next level and that you are raising capacity to do that, right? And I can tell you, I know you need more than money anyway. Like, it's not just about money. It's never just about money. Money is probably part of what you need, but my hunch is that in addition to the money, there's probably other stuff that you need. I have been doing this for a very, very long time. There is zero chance that the SEC is going to come after you because you suggest that you may be open to having supporters come in and capitalize your business. Okay. Not a problem.
That puts my mind at ease, because money, you're right, money is like the grease that makes the engine run, but then there's all the pieces of the engine that I have to build.
Yeah, and what's important is when you're talking about money to an investor, a good investor that you want in your business, a good investor that's gonna they're gonna be like up in your grill, right? Like, don't underestimate the implications of taking someone else's money. It changes the game. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it changes the game. What's really important is you start to think about your future growth is that you can have a full explanation, not a full explanation, nothing's full. Understand that the better you can articulate everything you need and not just say it's money, the more likely you'll find some of that stuff even before you have money, right? So it's just part of like building it. But with direct to consumer companies, of course you need money. You need to buy product, you need to do whatever it is, right? So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. The SEC. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And thank you for staying late.
Yeah, no problem.
There is one more entrepreneur that really wants feedback. Are you able?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Walter, you have 30 seconds, my friend. Or maybe 60 seconds.
Impossible. So Melissa, please bear with me. I really want your feedback. So my name is Walter Pearson. I'm founder of collegeboundparenting.com, a e-learning college planning platform for second-generation college-bound students. I've been a college prep consultant for over 15 years. Actually, didn't start off doing college consulting. I actually started off as an education technology selling education technology to colleges. And I worked for a company called College Bound Selection Service, where I sold data to admissions reps. And our company ascertained that data by providing surveys to high schools around the country. But they did not provide those surveys to inner city public high schools because they thought there was not enough ROI in their investment. There were basically not enough kids in those schools that were college bound. So I took that I took that very personal because I came from an inner city public school. So I set off to actually prove them wrong. So I became an independent college planning consultant on my own and began to help parents from urban school districts and helping their kids go to college. That began my journey. I've been providing college prep consultants for parents in high schools and organizations for the past 15 years. And recently, when COVID hit, I decided to take all of my services and put them online so that I can reach a broader audience of parents. And I developed my approach to college-bound parenting was actually born from one of the contracts that I had working for a charter school where I was providing college prep services to students, and I had to guide 90 students to college from their senior year into college. And one of the biggest obstacles that those students faced were that their parents were not informed or not very aware of the process, and that posed a big challenge to those students actually matriculating to college because they did not want to really fill out the FAFSA and understand all the steps that it took. And so I began to do more workshops and more consulting with the parents as opposed to the students. That's what, and my approach, I called my college planning approach, college-bound parenting, and that became that became the name of my company. My daughter, who's now a—
Hey, Walter, can I stop you? Because I'm gonna run out of time. Sure. So I think the same advice is for some of the other founders is you've got to have, I think you got to be a little more, I don't know what the right word is. People are awful. And our ability to listen to someone else's story is just where it's so hard for us to pay attention. And so while you want to find some of the juicy stuff in there, you've got to like thin it down. Just no one's going to sit and listen to what you're reading. So part of it is that, remember too, in our brains, the part of our brain that reads stuff is a different part of our brain that listens to stuff. The part that reads stuff can handle long sentences, lots of, stuff. The part that listens needs like really short sentences. So I would say like kind of go to the middle of that story, right? Which is what I think you're really passionate about, which is that every kid deserves access to college prep. But if parents aren't prepared to help their kids get prepped for college, it's really hard for those kids to get prepped for college because no one else is going to help them. I know because that's my story. So I created, right? So that you just cut, that's my story. And so this is why I created college bound parenting. It's the first platform that recognizes that engaging parents in college preparation, particularly in schools and systems that are not served by the major national players, is our best shot at giving the new generation of students an opportunity to go to college. I'm here today because I've done X, Y, and Z. Here's what's coming next, and here's how you can help me. And I know it sounds like, not to be crass, it's just, I still feel in that the emotion. Like I still see you as the person who's the best person, right? Like but you've just given me like more like little snippets instead of all the like long sentences, right? Like, or you can open up with, like I was, again, first person in my family to go to college. Nobody in that's why I went to such a shitty school, because how could my parents help me? They didn't go to college, right? I'm still the only person that ever went to graduate school. So now I'm in charge of educating everybody in my family about college, right? So it's a lot of people will relate to that, but you just gotta like, you might open up with like, I can't believe I even got to go to college. Like somehow I defied the odds and here's how. So, like you can do it a couple different ways, but you just gotta like cut to the chase, man. Cause like, as much as you're like, as much as I wish people were worthy enough to sit and listen, we're super lazy. Our attention span is like not good. And you just gotta cut to the chase.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
I gotta go, or else my
So
son
much.
is gonna.
Bye. Sorry for keeping you late. You're the best. Thank you. Bye.
What a pleasure. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you soon with more workshops.